The Reconstruction era from 1865 to 1877 represented a pivotal moment in American history, characterized by the federal government's attempt to integrate the southern states into the Union following the Civil War. This period introduced unprecedented levels of political and civil involvement for Black Americans. For the first time, significant numbers of African Americans were elected to public office, holding state, local, and federal positions. These strides, however, were met with fierce opposition as white supremacist groups and Southern politicians dismantled these gains through violence, legal manipulation, and terror campaigns aimed at maintaining white dominance. Today, we examine the brief political ascent of Black Americans during Reconstruction and the resurgence of white supremacy that effectively nullified their achievements. The abolition of slavery through the 13th Amendment, passed in 1865, followed by the 14th and 15th Amendments, which granted citizenship and voting rights to African Americans, respectively, were foundational in enabling Black political participation. These amendments established a framework for newly emancipated Black men to engage in public life as citizens. Between 1865 and 1877, approximately 2,000 African Americans held public office, from local governance to the national level. Black Americans served as sheriffs, justices of peace, city council members, and state legislators. Black representation was particularly significant in South Carolina, where Black legislators held a majority in the state assembly. Black legislators pushed for reforms to address inequalities and safeguard civil rights. They advocated for public education, economic support for freed slaves, and labor protections. In many cases, they laid the groundwork for a more inclusive society, working alongside radical Republicans who championed civil rights for former slaves. Despite these advancements, the backlash from Southern whites and entrenched racist institutions was severe. Black political gangs directly threatened the social and economic structures of the South, leading to an organized counter-reaction characterized by violence, disenfranchisement, and systematic racism. Groups like the KKK, the White League, and the Red Shirts emerged as paramilitary forces, terrorizing Black Americans and their allies to suppress political participation. The KKK was especially notorious for using lynching, arson, and intimidation to instill fear in Black communities. These violent acts were often aimed at disrupting elections and punishing Black Americans who sought public office or dared to vote. Southern states introduced legislation and constitutional changes to suppress Black voters. Poll taxes, literacy tests, and grandfather clauses effectively nullified the 15th Amendment's protections, disenfranchising nearly all Black voters in the South by the late 1800s. These laws solidified the Jim Crow system, which imposed racial segregation and disenfranchised Black citizens for decades. Violence against Black politicians became a common method for regaining control. The Colfax, Louisiana massacre in 1873 saw over 100 Black Americans eliminated while defending a local courthouse against white supremacists. Such events were emblematic of the lengths to which white supremacists would go to dismantle Black political influence. The violence were not limited to isolated incidents. It was a widespread tactic to instill fear and reinforce white supremacy. The political compromises that concluded Reconstruction were devastating to Black political power. In the Compromise of 1877, federal troops were withdrawn from the South, effectively abandoning Black Americans to the mercy of hostile local governments. Without federal oversight, white supremacist groups regained control, restoring racial hierarchies and ousting Black officials from office. The Reconstruction era stands as a remarkable, yet ultimately thwarted chapter in American history. Black Americans' political rise after the Civil War marked a moment of potential transformation within the United States. However, the violent resurgence of white supremacy effectively nullified the political and social gains achieved during Reconstruction. Through terror tactics, disenfranchisement, and systematic racism, white supremacists reasserted their control, relegating Black Americans to a position of limited political power until the civil rights movement of the 20th century. The story of Reconstruction serves as a testament to the ongoing struggle for racial equality and the perils of complacency in safeguarding civil rights. For more information, visit my website at www.ontheshoulders1.com. There, you can support my OTSOG book series. You can also support me on Patreon at patreon.com/OTSOG and hit the super like button under this video. I love you all, and make sure you catch the next video coming up.